The massive gates of the Galactic Council chamber opened slowly, revealing the dimly lit room where the most powerful beings in the galaxy had gathered. It was a moment of tension, as every diplomat and military leader present awaited the arrival of the most unusual guest the galaxy had ever seen, a human. Ambassador Jonas Drake walked through the entrance, his calm and composed demeanor cutting through the air of uncertainty. Clad in a simple dark suit, with no armor or weapon at his side, he didn't appear as someone of importance, but there was an air of mystery surrounding him. A quiet intensity in his eyes made everyone wonder just who this human truly was. The Council, having dealt with hundreds of species over the centuries, had never seen anyone quite like him. The members of the Galactic Council sat at their massive table, their eyes on the human diplomat. They were a diverse group of species: tall, short, humanoid, insectoid, and many others, their faces all reflecting curiosity, suspicion, and for some disdain. Humans were still a relatively young species in the grand scheme of the galaxy, their recent expansion drawing both admiration and concern. But despite their rapid technological progress, they were still seen by many as just another race trying to find their place among the stars. No one expected much from them, and certainly not from their diplomats. Ambassador Drake walked confidently to the center of the room, stopping in front of the holographic projection system that connected him to the various representatives. He bowed slightly in respect, but said nothing, waiting for the council to speak first. The silence in the room stretched on, broken only by the quiet hum of the lights above. It was as if the very air held its breath, waiting for something to happen. The tension was palpable. The council members exchanged glances, and then the first speaker, a tall and imposing figure from the Exenary species, finally broke the silence. "So, human," the Exenary ambassador said, his voice deep and full of authority, "what brings you to the Galactic Council? What is it that you wish to discuss with us today?" Drake's expression didn't change. His eyes remained steady, his hands clasped behind his back. "I've come to offer a simple proposition," he replied, his voice smooth and calm, betraying no emotion. "Humanity seeks peace and cooperation, but we will no longer tolerate the way the galaxy has treated us. The time for negotiation is over." The room fell silent again, but this time the silence was different. It was one of confusion, of surprise. Some council members leaned forward, eager to hear more, while others remained skeptical, unsure of what to make of this unexpected declaration. The Exenary ambassador, clearly unamused, leaned back in his chair. "And what exactly do you mean by that?" he asked, his tone sharp. "We are not foolish, human. The galaxy is a vast place, and we are the ones who have the power to maintain order. You are still far from a major player in galactic politics. If you think that your little species can change anything, you are mistaken." Drake's expression remained unchanged, his voice steady as he answered, "I don't think you understand. Humanity is not here to beg for respect. We are here to make a statement. You've underestimated us for too long. You've ignored our warnings, and now, the time has come for you to listen." The other council members began murmuring among themselves. There was a mix of disbelief and growing concern. The humans were no longer just trying to fit in. They were speaking as equals, as though they already had the power to make demands. This wasn't what the council had expected. Humans were supposed to be grateful for their place in the galaxy, not challenging the established order. The Exenary ambassador's face darkened. "You speak boldly for such a young species. Do you not realize the danger of your words, human? You are nothing compared to the ancient races in this room. Do you honestly think you can demand anything from us?" Drake's lips curled into the faintest of smiles, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I think you'll find that the rules have changed. Humanity is no longer just a small player. We've built our strength, and we've learned from the galaxy's mistakes. Your systems are failing. The peace you've struggled to maintain is crumbling. You can ignore us, but the galaxy can no longer afford to do that." The room was stunned into silence. It was as if the very air had been drained from the chamber. The council had never encountered a diplomat like this, someone who spoke with such confidence and authority, despite being outnumbered by countless species who had centuries, even millennia, of experience in interstellar politics. The ex-Enary ambassador's eyes narrowed. He was clearly not accustomed to being challenged, especially by a human. You should be careful with your words, human. The council does not take threats lightly. We have dealt with more dangerous beings than you. Drake's eyes flickered slightly, but his calm expression never wavered. I'm not threatening you, he said quietly. I'm simply stating a fact. You've already shown the galaxy what happens when you ignore the potential of a species. You pushed humanity to the edge, but we've come back stronger. We will not let you control our fate anymore. The other members of the council exchanged uneasy glances. This wasn't what they had expected from this meeting. They had thought that a human diplomat would come to them with requests, with offers of cooperation, perhaps even desperate pleas for assistance. But this was something entirely different. Enough of this, said another member, a lithe serpentine species who had been watching the exchange with quiet interest. If this is all you have to offer, then you are wasting our time. She stood up, her voice rising in authority. We will not be threatened by you, human. Drake turned his head slightly, his gaze locking with hers. No one is threatening anyone, he replied evenly. I'm simply stating the reality of the situation. You have two choices. You can continue to ignore us and face the consequences, or you can finally recognize humanity as a true power in the galaxy. It's your choice. The tension in the room reached a breaking point. No one had ever spoken to the council like this. Yet, despite the anger bubbling up, despite the growing sense of danger in the air, something deeper lingered. It was the undeniable fact that humanity had changed. The galaxy could no longer afford to treat them as insignificant, as weak, or as easily dismissed. The ex-Enary ambassador stood, his face flushed with rage. You have no idea what you're dealing with, human. You've been allowed to play at the edges of the galaxy, but now you've overstepped. Drake didn't flinch. I'm not here to play, he replied calmly. I'm here to make you listen. The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of their meaning. No one moved, no one spoke. The room was charged with an energy that was equal parts fear and defiance. And then, just as the tension seemed poised to explode, the lights in the chamber flickered. Everyone froze. The air seemed to crackle with a sudden surge of energy, as if something was approaching. Drake's gaze never wavered. He was waiting, patient, waiting for the galaxy to realize that things had changed. The Council's grip on the galaxy was weakening, and humanity had made its first move. For the first time in a long while, the galaxy would have to face the reality of humanity's power. The air in the Galactic Council chamber grew thick with unease. The lights flickered once more, casting eerie shadows across the room. It wasn't just the disruption in the lighting that unnerved the council members. It was the realization that humanity's envoy, Ambassador Jonas Drake, was not the simple, unassuming diplomat they had expected. He wasn't here to negotiate. He was here to deliver a message. The ex-Enary ambassador, his face a mix of frustration and confusion, slammed his fist onto the table. "What is this? What have you done to our systems?" he demanded, his voice rising in anger. Drake didn't flinch. He stood perfectly still, his eyes scanning the faces of the council members, unfazed by the growing chaos around him. "It's not what I've done," he replied calmly. "It's what you've ignored. The systems you rely on to maintain control. They're obsolete, and you've spent so long pretending otherwise that now it's too late to fix them." A tense silence followed his words. The council members, many of whom had never feared a species as young as humanity, now looked at each other nervously. The young human species had always been seen as a potential threat, but no one had expected them to be so bold. No one had expected them to attack their systems, to sabotage their communications, to make them feel this vulnerable. Another voice broke the silence, this time from the silent, insectoid representative of the Jovar. His multifaceted eyes flicked to Drake, wary but inquisitive. "You've disrupted our power grid and communication networks. You must have help. You don't have this kind of capability on your own." Drake's lips curled into a small, almost imperceptible smile. "You're right. I don't," he admitted. "But it doesn't matter if I have help or not. The point is that the galaxy is shifting. Humanity has been underestimated for far too long. You thought you could control us with promises, with threats, with alliances. You were wrong." As he spoke, the room seemed to constrict. The council's representatives exchanged uneasy glances, some speaking in hushed tones, others preparing to leave. The air was thick with confusion, anger, and fear. And then, just as quickly as it had started, the lights stabilized, flickering back to normal. But the tension didn't lift. It lingered like an invisible storm cloud. The Exonary ambassador, now visibly shaken, stood tall and pointed a shaking finger at Drake. "You are playing a dangerous game, human," he growled. "If you think you can challenge the authority of the Galactic Council, you are gravely mistaken. We will destroy you." Drake's expression remained unchanged. "You're welcome to try, but it won't work. The galaxy has lived in peace under your control for too long. It's time for a change." Before anyone could react, another loud bang reverberated through the chamber. The ground trembled, and the ceiling above them shuddered as though something enormous was passing overhead. It wasn't just the council that felt it. The entire headquarters seemed to rumble, as though something was approaching at a speed unimaginable to those who'd never experienced true power. The insectoid Jovar, his antennae trembling, hissed in panic. "What is that?" The Exonary ambassador was no less shaken, his once steady voice now wavering with doubt. "Impossible. No one could." Drake didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned his gaze toward the far corner of the room, where a large holographic map of the galaxy was displayed. As if on cue, the map began to distort, flickering, showing anomalies across several star systems. The lights flickered again, and the tension in the room grew tighter, thicker, as the members of the council realized that this wasn't a coincidence. This was deliberate. "That is the sound of your control slipping away," Drake said coldly, his voice cutting through the growing panic in the room. "I've activated a system-wide signal. It's spread through your communications, your military networks, everything you thought was secure. You can't hide from this." The chamber seemed to freeze for a heartbeat. Council members, once brimming with arrogance, now seemed uncertain, nervous. The reality of their situation had become clear. Drake wasn't just a diplomat. He was a force in and of himself, and the humans weren't the unorganized, vulnerable species they had once been. They had learned. They had adapted. And now, they were taking control. The Jovar ambassador, his voice trembling, spoke up. "What do you want from us, human? We've tolerated your species, we've given you a seat at the table. What more could you possibly want?" Drake turned back to face them, and his gaze was unwavering. "What I want? It's simple. Humanity will no longer bow to your will. You've manipulated us, lied to us, and treated us as insignificant. But we're not weak. We're stronger than you think. And if you don't change, humanity will be forced to show the galaxy just how far we're willing to go to protect ourselves." The council members glanced nervously at each other, their earlier bravado now replaced with uncertainty. Drake's words were a revelation, a shockwave that rattled them to their core. They had always assumed that they were the ones in control of the galaxy, that no species could ever rise to challenge their influence. But here was humanity, small, young, yet full of determination, shaking the foundations of everything they had built. The Exonary ambassador, still clearly shaken, regained some of his composure. "This is a mistake, human, a costly one. The galaxy won't allow you to break the peace we've created. We will fight back." Drake's eyes narrowed, but his voice remained calm. "You've already fought back. You fought humanity for centuries. And yet here we are. You couldn't stop us before. And you won't stop us now. The tension in the room was unbearable. The representatives of the Galactic Council were facing a new reality, one where humanity was no longer the passive species they had once been. The moment they had all dismissed as insignificant had grown into something far greater than they could have ever predicted. Drake turned to leave the chamber, his movement precise and deliberate, his footsteps echoing through the room. He didn't need to say more. His message had been delivered. Humanity had come for a reason. The galaxy would change, whether the Council wanted it or not. As he walked away, leaving the Council members in stunned silence, a feeling of dread settled over them. They knew this was just the beginning. The galaxy would never be the same again. The tension in the Galactic Council chamber had reached a breaking point. The representatives were still reeling from the shock of the human diplomat's words, but something far more pressing was unfolding. As the doors to the chamber closed behind Ambassador Jonas Drake, the sense of dread didn't dissipate. In fact, it only deepened. The Council members, once so certain of their superiority over the lesser species of the galaxy, now found themselves questioning everything. What had they truly known about humanity? How had they missed the growing storm of potential that had been quietly building? No longer were humans the naive newcomers they had once perceived them to be. They were not just players in the galaxy. They were an emerging force. "We've underestimated them," the Exenary ambassador murmured, still seated, his voice hoarse. "We thought they were just another species vying for scraps." But that was something else. A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. The Jovar representative, his insectoid features twitching nervously, added, "It's not just their words. The system-wide signal he initiated. What was that? It was unlike anything we've ever seen. How could they possess this kind of power?" The Council had always prided itself on the superiority of its military forces and technological capabilities. Every species at the table had advanced far beyond humanity. And yet, in a single moment, everything they believed to be true had been thrown into doubt. The holographic map that had once displayed the peacekeeping zones and military territories of the galaxy now flickered again, revealing something that no one had expected. Several star systems once thought to be under the Council's complete control were blinking in irregular patterns. Systems that had once been stable were now showing signs of interference. Drifting communications, data breaches, and worse, disjointed military commands. It was as if something, or someone, was actively working to dismantle their most secure systems. "This is bad." The Jovar's voice was filled with genuine panic. "Someone is attacking us from the inside." The Exenary ambassador banged his fist on the table, his anger mixing with fear. "We need to understand what's going on now. Find out who or what is causing this disruption. We must neutralize it." Did we ever ask ourselves why humanity has been so quiet for so long? The voice of the Avakara ambassador, a slender species known for their sharp analytical minds, was cold and thoughtful. "They've been observing us, growing stronger, adapting. Perhaps they were waiting for the right moment. But now, they've made their move." The Galactic Council had spent centuries perfecting their systems of control, their delicate balance of power. But the truth was that all of it relied on their ability to act as one, a united front in the face of any threat. And now, for the first time in centuries, they had faced a threat that was not only coordinated but born of a species they had underestimated. And this was only the beginning. The Exenary ambassador glared at the holographic projections, his expression filled with growing dread. "We have made a grave mistake. We've been too complacent. Humanity's systems are primitive, but their adaptability, their resilience, we've seen it before. We pushed them to the brink, and now they're pushing back with a fury none of us expected." The Council remained quiet, each species contemplating what had just transpired. Humanity was no longer a footnote in the galactic story. It was becoming the story. "We can still fix this," The Avakara ambassador said slowly, breaking the silence. If we act quickly, we can isolate the source of the disruption and eliminate it before it spreads further. Another voice, much more skeptical, chimed in. And if humanity is behind this, if they have truly found a way to outmaneuver us? There was a moment of heavy silence as every representative turned to face the speaker, the weight of their collective uncertainty pressing down on the room. We must consider that possibility, the Avakara continued. If they are responsible for this, it's a declaration, a challenge to the power of the Council. And we cannot let that stand. The Exenary ambassador nodded reluctantly. We'll need to retaliate, show humanity that their actions come with consequences. But we must be careful. If they have truly breached our systems so deeply, we're facing an enemy that is unlike anything we've ever dealt with. The Jovar hissed nervously. We've faced war before, but this is different. We've never faced an enemy that thinks like we do, an enemy that can adapt. Another voice, a deep and rumbling tone from the Volcran representative, added, we cannot underestimate them again. If humanity has truly found a way to threaten us, then the Council must respond with everything we have. The debate was growing heated as every representative shared their thoughts on how to handle the situation. Some wanted immediate military action, deploying fleets, attacking the human colonies, and demonstrating the Council's might. Others, more cautious, wanted to investigate further before acting rashly. But just as the arguments reached a fever pitch, the holographic map flickered again. This time, the projection wasn't just showing the disruption of their systems, it was showing something much worse. A massive, unexpected shift in the fabric of space-time itself was occurring. A series of distortions had begun forming in the galaxy. Entire sectors were becoming uncharted, as if something had wiped them from existence. A massive distortion seemed to be drawing closer, its edges glowing with an eerie red hue. This can't be happening. The Jovar ambassador stammered. What is that? Is it moving toward us? Drake's calm voice echoed in the council chamber once more. I told you the rules have changed. Humanity is no longer just a player. We are here to stay. And we will do whatever it takes to protect our future. It was then that the members of the Galactic Council realized the full scope of what was at stake. This wasn't just a diplomatic failure. This was a cataclysmic shift. Humanity had come prepared, ready to take its place at the table, ready to reshape the galaxy. But the consequences of their actions would be far-reaching. The future of the galaxy and the survival of the Council's power now rested on how they responded. And that response would define the fate of the entire galaxy. The Council had never experienced a crisis of this magnitude. The disruption in the galactic systems had already proven that humanity was no longer a mere inconvenience. They were a formidable force. What was once seen as a series of isolated attacks was now becoming something far more dangerous. The distortion in space, the anomalies that were spreading like wildfire across the galaxy, and the sudden and inexplicable loss of control over some of the most secured systems in the galaxy, all pointed to one thing. Humanity was no longer just part of the galaxy. They had become its greatest unknown, and possibly its greatest threat. The representatives of the Galactic Council gathered again, this time more urgently than ever before. There was no time for formalities. Every species present knew that their very survival could be on the line. The distorted sectors, now glowing with an ominous red hue on the map, were growing larger. The galaxy was literally being torn apart at the seams, and humanity had made it clear they were the ones pulling the strings. We can't let this go on, the Exenary ambassador said, his voice low but filled with dread. We can no longer pretend that this is just some minor conflict. They have found a way to manipulate the very fabric of space itself. If we don't act quickly, it could be the end of everything we've built. The insectoid Jovar, who had remained quiet up until now, spoke in a shaky voice. It's more than that. This is something unprecedented. We've never seen anything like it. No species has the ability to manipulate space-time on this scale. Humanity shouldn't even have this kind of power. There's something more at play here, the Avakara ambassador said, his tone clipped with frustration. Humanity didn't just stumble into this. They've known how to do this for a while. They've been planning this. The Volcran representative, whose deep voice had an almost growling quality to it, shifted uncomfortably. If humanity is responsible for this disruption, if they're the ones creating these anomalies, we are facing something far worse than we could ever have imagined. They've evolved beyond anything we can comprehend. The reality was settling in. The Galactic Council was facing something it had never anticipated. A species that had been ignored, underestimated, and pushed to the edge had just demonstrated an unimaginable capability. Humanity was no longer simply a potential threat. They were the storm. We've heard their message, the Avakara continued. But the question is, what are we going to do about it? We cannot ignore this. We have to act. And we have to act fast. I agree, the Exenary ambassador said grimly, his eyes now locked on the holographic map. Humanity has proven they can disrupt the balance of the galaxy. We must respond. If we let them continue unchecked, we risk losing everything. The council debated furiously, but no resolution was reached. Each species had its own agenda, its own interests, and its own fears. The Jovar were terrified, their once proud military forces now outclassed by humanity's unexpected abilities. The Volcran were anxious, always looking toward strength and power, and seeing nothing but uncertainty ahead. The Exenary, focused on maintaining their dominance, were beginning to realize that their power might be slipping away faster than they could control. And in the midst of it all, one simple question lingered in the back of every mind. How could something as young and seemingly insignificant as humanity have pulled this off? The answers weren't easy to find. It was one thing to see humanity as a primitive species with raw ambition and a will to survive. It was another to realize that those same traits had now been honed into something far sharper, something more dangerous than anyone had thought possible. As the debate continued, a soft chime interrupted the chaos. A message. The council chamber fell silent as the holographic projection activated. It was a message from Ambassador Jonas Drake. The face of the human diplomat appeared, calm and resolute. To the Galactic Council, he began, his voice carrying a weight that echoed through the chamber. By now, you've all seen the consequences of your actions. Your systems are crumbling. Your security is shattered. And that is only the beginning. His words cut through the tense atmosphere like a blade. You thought humanity was weak, insignificant. You thought we would never rise up. You were wrong. Now you will learn what it means to face the wrath of a species that has been pushed too far. The faces of the council members tightened in response. The Jovar shifted uncomfortably. The Exenary gritted their teeth, and the Volcran's eyes narrowed. They had expected diplomacy. They had expected negotiation. What they had gotten was a declaration of war. You asked for peace, Drake continued. We gave it to you. You ignored our concerns, dismissed our grievances, and underestimated our resolve. But peace doesn't mean subjugation. It doesn't mean pretending to be equal while secretly pulling the strings from above. Humanity is done with that. A heavy silence filled the room, thick with the weight of Drake's words. The council knew they couldn't just ignore him. Humanity wasn't bluffing. They weren't afraid to take bold actions. The message was clear. If the council didn't change, humanity would make them change. Drake's voice softened but remained firm. We are not looking for war. We don't want to destroy you, but we will defend ourselves. The galaxy will learn that humanity is not to be trifled with. And if you try to challenge us again, we will not hesitate to do what is necessary. With that, the transmission cut off, leaving the council members in stunned silence. What now? The Exenary ambassador muttered, his voice trembling. What are we supposed to do? The room was filled with unease. No one spoke immediately. It wasn't fear, per se, but the recognition of a truth none of them had been ready to confront. Humanity was no longer just a part of the galaxy. They were a force in it, and they were ready to make their presence known. The Jovar spoke again, his voice laced with a newfound urgency. We can't fight them. Not like this. We've never faced anything like them before. They don't fight like we do. They don't think like we do. Then we'll have to think differently, the Avakara replied, his expression hardening. The time for negotiation is over. We either find a way to deal with humanity, or we risk the destruction of everything. And so, the Council faced its grim choice: adapt or face extinction at the hands of a species they had once dismissed. It was a moment that would change the fate of the galaxy, and the decisions made in the coming days would either save or destroy them. The Council had descended into chaos. The weight of their inaction was finally pressing down on them, and no one knew exactly what to do. For the first time in history, the Galactic Council had no answers, no plans. What could they do? Humanity had shattered their expectations, shattered the very foundations they'd built their authority upon. The holographic map in the center of the room now pulsed with ominous red lines. Every species at the table could see it. The distortion in the galaxy was spreading. Whole systems were vanishing, entire colonies disappearing into the void. A galaxy they once thought they controlled was slowly slipping away, piece by piece, and they had no idea how to stop it. We cannot continue like this. The Exenary ambassador finally spoke up, his voice shaky. This isn't a war. This is something else entirely. Humanity isn't just fighting for survival. They're trying to erase everything we've built. There was a long pause as every representative considered the depth of the situation. The Jovar, ever the fearful species, were visibly trembling, their multifaceted eyes darting between the flickering projections. Do we even know what humanity wants? The Jovar ambassador asked, almost pleading. What are they after? Why are they doing this? We know what they want, the Avakara responded sharply, his pale eyes gleaming with cold resolve. They want to be treated as equals. They want respect. But more than that, they want control. The Vulcan, massive and imposing, leaned forward, his voice rumbling deep from his chest. If they want control, they'll take it. And if we don't act now, we won't have any power left to stop them. Every ambassador in the room was struggling with the same truth. Humanity had risen far faster than anyone could have predicted. In less than a generation, they had evolved from a fringe species, one deemed insignificant by the Council, to a galactic force capable of destabilizing their entire order. The power of their military, their technological advances, and now even their control over space itself. Humanity had the upper hand. The holographic display flickered again, showing a new, more terrifying image. Humanity's influence was spreading outward from Earth. The star systems under their control had doubled in size in less than a year. The projection showed coordinated military fleets, vast fleets of human warships moving like a storm across the galaxy, destabilizing key sectors and threatening critical systems. What had once been a quiet rebellion was now an unstoppable force. The Exenary's voice cracked with the tension in the room. If they control the fabric of space itself, we don't stand a chance. Our fleets are nothing against that kind of power. The Council, for all its strength, had no answer. Their ships could fight wars, they could dominate star systems, but this was different. Humanity had unlocked a new kind of power, one that transcended what the Council thought was possible. It wasn't just about firepower anymore. It was about control of the very fabric of the galaxy. Ambassador Jonas Drake's earlier message still rang in their minds. He had warned them, told them what would happen if they continued down this path. Humanity had been patient, waiting for their moment. And now that the moment had come, they weren't going to back down. We must retaliate, the Vulcan growled, his hand slamming onto the table. We cannot allow humanity to dismantle everything we've worked for. We don't have the luxury of making rash decisions, the Avakara replied, his voice colder than ever. If we respond in kind, we risk an all-out war, a war that will destroy the very fabric of the galaxy We've spent millennia building. The council was divided, and as time dragged on, the pressure to act mounted. The fear was palpable. Some argued for immediate retaliation, others for more caution. But no one could deny one truth: they were being outplayed. They had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price. As the debate raged on, the atmosphere shifted again, this time with a renewed sense of urgency. The Jovar ambassador was the first to speak after the long silence. If humanity is truly capable of manipulating space, of altering the very fabric of the galaxy, then we're not dealing with a threat we can just fight with weapons or strategy. This is something far more dangerous. If we want to survive, we need to understand their methods. We need to learn how they're doing this. The other ambassadors fell silent, contemplating the Jovar's words. Was there another way? Was it possible to reverse what humanity had done? Or was it already too late? Just then, the Avikara broke the silence. There is another option. If humanity is truly capable of these extraordinary feats, then they must be stopped. But we must stop them at the source. If we can capture one of their leaders, we might have a chance to understand their methods. We could turn the tide, break their control over space, and force them to come to the table. The council was quiet. The idea was bold, almost reckless, but it was their only option. If they could capture a human leader, someone with knowledge of their technologies, perhaps they could reverse the tide of humanity's advancement. But the risk was high. Humanity was dangerous, and any attempt to capture one of their own would be seen as a declaration of war. We do this, and there's no going back, the Exenary said, his voice strained. If we fail, humanity will destroy us. The council fell into a tense silence once again. The stakes had never been higher. The fate of the galaxy and the council's future rested on their next move. At that moment, an alert flashed across the holographic map. A new transmission came through, this time from Earth itself. The faces of the ambassadors turned toward the projection with growing fear. The transmission opened, and once again, the calm and collected voice of Ambassador Jonas Drake filled the room. "Council," Drake began, his voice smooth and certain. "We've given you all a chance. We've shown you the path, but it seems you didn't listen. Now, the time for talks is over. Humanity is no longer waiting. We are here, and you will either accept our terms or face the consequences." Drake's image faded, leaving behind a chilling silence. The decision had been made for them. Humanity was no longer waiting for the Council's approval. They were done negotiating. The galaxy, once a peaceful balance of power, had become a powder keg. The Council had no choice but to respond, and they knew that whatever choice they made, the future of the galaxy would be irrevocably altered.